We'll analyze all the fallout on our roundtable, but we begin with that blockbuster indictment of Roger Stone. The political showman, dark arts operative, first introduced to Donald Trump decades ago by the infamous Roy Cohn, became the sixth close Trump associate charged by Mueller in the Russia investigation. Stone joins former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, former campaign chair Paul Manafort, deputy campaign chair Rick Gates, foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos, and longtime personal lawyer Michael Cohen. All six cited for lying under oath in the Russia investigation, a stunning pattern of deception. And that's not all. Mueller has also uncovered a wealth of contacts between Russians and Trump associates during the campaign and transition. Look at this headline from the New York Times, detailing more than 100 contacts, despite repeated and adamant denials from Trump's team of any contacts at all. But here's what Mueller has not revealed: any direct charge that President Trump or anyone on his team conspired with Russians to interfere in our elections. Hence the president's mantra, no collusion. The big question now, is that how Mueller's investigation will end? With overwhelming evidence that Trump's team tried to cover up contacts with Russia, but no prosecutions for conspiring with Russia. Is this the end of the beginning for Mueller, or the beginning of the end? What happens with Roger Stone, a big piece of that puzzle. He starts us off this morning. Roger, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate you being here, but I have to say, and you know this, is pretty unusual strategy. Most people indicted go underground until the official proceedings. What do you hope to gain with interviews like this?
Well, I must tell you, George, I think the way I was treated on Thursday is extraordinary. I think the American people need to hear about it. I'm 66 years old. I don't own a firearm. I have no prior criminal record. My passport has expired. The special counsel's office is well aware of the fact that I'm represented. The idea that a 29-member SWAT team in full tactical gear with assault weapons would surround my house, 17 vehicles in my front yard, including 2 armored vehicles, a helicopter overhead, amphibious vehicles in the back where my house backs onto a canal, and that I would open the door looking down the barrel of assault weapons, that I would be frog-marched out front, barefooted and handcuffed when they simply could have
Roger, let me just
contacted me.
I
think people need to know about
that. Yeah, but as you know, it's pretty standard for that to happen. They were concerned.
No, actually,
well, that's what our Justice Department people say. They say were concerned you were a flight risk. They were concerned you might tamper with evidence. They were concerned you might destroy evidence. So they did that. And even you, by your own testimony, by your own admission, said that the FBI agents were courteous. So let's get on.
No. Let me address that, if I may. First of all, I was released on a surety bond on my own signature, which is evidence that I was not a flight risk. And secondarily, I've been under investigation for 2 years. I've destroyed nothing, but if I were going to destroy evidence, wouldn't I have done it a long time ago? They could simply have called my lawyers, and I would have turned myself in.
That's a question.
This was an expensive show of force to try to depict me as public enemy number one, the OG. It's an attempt to poison the jury pool. These are Gestapo tactics.
Let's get right to what may be the most explosive paragraph in the indictment, right there on page 4. Mueller and his team write, after the July 22nd, 2016 release of stolen DNC emails by Organization 1, that's WikiLeaks, a senior Trump campaign official was directed to contact Stone about any additional releases and what other damaging information Organization 1 had regarding the Clinton campaign. Stone thereafter told the Trump campaign about potential future releases of damaging material by Organization 1. Stone also corresponded with associates about contacting Organization 1 in order to obtain additional emails damaging to the Clinton campaign. You said you believe that senior official was Rick Gates, the deputy campaign chair?
Yes, who I believe is seeking a reduction in his sentence. Later on, there's a reference to an exchange between Steve Bannon in which he asks me about a public event, Julian Assange's press event on October 7th, and I respond with 2 matters that have already been published by Politico and The Guardian, completely public information. One, that there are security concerns by Assange in the embassy in Ecuador, and secondarily, as Politico reported, that there would be weekly dumps of information every week for 10 weeks with all U.S.-related information, election-related information, released in the weeks before the election.
So Rick Gates
none of that proprietary or secret.
So Rick Gates, though, did contact you about getting information?
That is speculation on my part. In all honesty, I have no emails.
Well, you would know if you spoke with him.
I have no text message that reflect. I never spoke about this matter with Rick Gates, but I'm mindful of the special counsel's ability to induce people to say things that are not true, particularly people who are seeking a reduction in their sentence or people who have an axe to grind. I urge the president to fire Steve Bannon. That piece which I wrote for the Daily Caller showed up on Drudge, and therefore it had a major impact. I suspect that I'm not his favorite person, but notice I am not charged with conspiracy or with having advanced knowledge of the content.
I said that at the top.
Or the substance of the WikiLeaks disclosure.
Do you know who directed Rick Gates to contact you?
I don't know that anybody did. I guess we'll find out at trial. But to have Wolf Blitzer on CNN or Preet Bharara, a man accused of a federal judge of willfully leaking grand jury testimony to the media, speculate that that was Donald Trump, that is baseless, irresponsible speculation. Well, I never discussed this matter with candidate Trump or President Trump, as I told you previously.
Yeah, you said that to me.
And that remains the case.
Yeah, you said that to me in the past. You never discussed WikiLeaks or Julian Assange with President Trump. But have you ever had any conversations with the president during the campaign or since the campaign about Russia or the Mueller investigation?
None whatsoever.
Zero.
Categorically.
Categorically.
Zero.
You know, the president seemed to be distancing himself from you in a tweet last night. He wrote, Roger Stone didn't even work for me anywhere near the election. Does that concern you?
No, not really. I mean, when Sarah Sanders says this has nothing to do with the president, she is correct. I never discussed these matters with the president. And everything that I did regarding trying to get as much public attention to the WikiLeaks disclosures among voters, among the media, is constitutionally protected free speech. That's what I engaged in. It's called politics, and they haven't criminalized it, at least not yet.
You say it's constitutionally protected free speech, but we now know from U.S. intelligence and Robert Mueller that Russia was behind that hack of the DNC emails.
No, we have an allegation that is yet unproved in any U.S. court of law. It is an allegation.
Well, but we have
these are the same people.
The unanimous recommendation,
excuse
me, the unanimous conclusion of U.S. intelligence agencies. So given that, do you regret the role you played?
The intelligence agencies are politicized, as we know. They also told us Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction.
So you don't regret your role in disseminating those emails?
I didn't disseminate any emails. That would be a mischaracterization of what I did. All I did was publicize the fact. I think that they were devastating, and the entire question of where they came from and how they were published is meant to distract from the content of those emails, which demonstrated the corruption and the dirty tricks of the Clinton campaign.
Well, most people, I mean, you know, the U.S. intelligence agencies actually completely disagree. They say what was important here is that Russia was interfering in our election, and then by helping that cause, aren't you aiding and abetting an adversary of the United States?
First of all, I challenge that characterization. It is unproven. It is a claim. I tried to do the same thing that Daniel Ellsberg did, for which the New York Times and the Washington Post called him a hero, although I never received any stolen or hacked material and handed it to anyone. All I did was take publicly available information and try to hype it to get it as much attention as possible, because I had a tip that the information was politically significant and that it would come in October.
On Friday, you were arrested, but Mueller's team also and the FBI executed search warrants of your home in Florida and up in New York City as well. Do you have any idea what they were after, and are you worried about what they will find?
No, not in the slightest. I am concerned that they took a number of privileged communications between me and my attorneys. But in all honesty, I have been under surveillance for 2 years. My email, my text messages, my phone calls have been fully reviewed. We know that because they've asked people who are associated with me about specific items before the grand jury. The New York Times reported on January 20th, 2017, that I was among 3 Trump aides under surveillance in 2016. We hope to learn more about that in Discovery. The Times will not retract that story. They still stand by it. I believe it to be true. And so there is nothing to find. I do have 1 million emails. They have been reported, many of them taken out of context in this indictment, but there is nothing to find. Again, I think it is designed to intimidate me, or perhaps seek personal information that it could be used to embarrass me, but has nothing to do with WikiLeaks, Russia, the 2016 campaign, or anything else.
And just to be clear, have you destroyed or discarded any communications devices, wiped any hard drives clean since the campaign?
Categorically not. My lawyers have been insistent on this. We very early had a request from both the Senate and the House. We have destroyed nothing whatsoever.
You say you won't bear false witness against President Trump. Are you prepared to tell the truth about your dealings with him to the special counsel, your truth about your dealings with the campaign? Any chance you'll cooperate with special counsel Robert Mueller if he asks?
You know, that's a question I would have to I'd have to determine after my attorneys have some discussion. If there's wrongdoing by other people in the campaign that I know about, which I know of none, but if there is, I would certainly testify honestly. I'd also testify honestly about any other matter, including any communications with the president. It's true that we spoke on the phone, but those communications are political in nature, they're benign, and there is certainly no conspiracy with Russia. The president's right. There is no Russian collusion.
And he's never suggested to you in any way, shape, or form that he might offer you a pardon?
Absolutely, positively not. I have never discussed a pardon. The only person that I had advocated a pardon for, as we've discussed previously, is a posthumous pardon for Marcus Garvey. And I have written the president as to why I think that should be done.
Prosecutors have looked at this case, say you might need a pardon because they say it's a slam dunk case, including Chris Christie, who's coming up on the program later. You know, you denied having any documents or text messages discussing WikiLeaks or Assange, but the prosecutors in the indictment lay out several emails, dozens of text messages.
You know, they're right. I did forget on some occasions that I had text messages and emails that are entirely exculpatory and prove that everything I said before the House
Let me stop you right there.
You
say you forgot. On the day you testified, you didn't have any exchanges with Mr. Credico. You had 30 exchanges, 30 text exchanges with Randy Credico on the day you said you didn't remember it.
Mr. Credico, a man who threatened to put a bullet in the head of one of Mueller's witnesses before the grand jury, but is not charged with witness tampering or intimidation, a man who lied to the grand jury about being my source regarding the significance of the WikiLeaks disclosures, a man who threatened me in writing to have a woman falsely accuse me of sexual assault.
The text messages have nothing to do with anything else having to do with him. The text messages are the text messages. They're documents.
I will prove in court that any failure of memory on my part was without intent and would be immaterial. I am human, and I did make some errors, but they're errors that would be inconsequential within the scope of this investigation.
You're also accused of tampering with Mr. Credico. I want to show some of the exchanges you had with him on multiple occasions. This is from the indictment. On multiple occasions, including on or about December 1st, 2017, Stone told Person 2 Credico that Person 2 should do a Frank Pentangeli for HPSCI in order to avoid contradicting Stone's testimony. Of course, Frank Pentangeli, a character in the film The Godfather Part 2, which both Stone and Credico had discussed, who testifies before a congressional committee, and in that testimony claims to not to know critical information that he does in fact know. So you were telling him not to tell the truth.
No, not at all. If you saw the actual exchange, first of all, Mr. Credico is an impressionist. He does Humphrey Bogart, he does Jack Nicholson, he does Richard Nixon, he does Bill Clinton. The exchange we talked about is Roger Stone this, Roger Stone that. Roger Stone was in the olive oil business with my father, but that was a long time ago. It has to be seen in context. It is a humorous exchange. So they taking things out of context and present them in a light that it mischaracterized their significance. I never told Mr. Credico to lie. I did at one point when he said, my liberal friends will be very upset, my progressive friends will be upset if they believe I was helping you because they would think I was helping Trump. It was only in that context that the Fifth Amendment protections were discussed.
Final question. You're in good shape, but you're not a young man, 66 years old. Are you prepared to spend the last best years of your life in jail?
In view of the fact that I expect to be acquitted and vindicated, and that my attorneys, including Bruce Rogow, one of the very best attorneys in the country, Grant Smith, Rob Bushell, and Tara Campion, believe that this indictment is thin as piss on a rock. So I'm prepared to fight for my life. I have to go to the public at stonedefensefund.com to ask for their support.
Roger Stone, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
We are now joined by the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff. Congressman, thank you for joining us this morning. You just heard Roger Stone right there. I'm not going to repeat exactly what he said. Thin as, well, I guess I'll repeat it. Thin as piss on a rock. That's what he says the indictment is. Your response?
Well, look, he's presumed innocent, but these are very specific allegations of lies and witness intimidation. They're matters that will be easily provable. These are not ambiguous statements. They're very detailed. and I think he's going to need a much better defense than the one you just heard. But look, I prosecuted a number of white-collar cases when I was assistant U.S. attorney. White-collar defendants always make some variation of the same argument, and that is, I have a perfectly innocent explanation for this fact, and as for this other fact, I can come up with an innocent explanation for that, and likewise for all these other facts. But whatever you do, don't look at their totality. But when you look at the totality of what's going on here, and you look at the chronology, we know that the Russians told the Trump campaign as early as April of 2016 that they had the stolen emails. We know that they offered dirt to the president's son, Don Jr., and he said he would love to have the Russian government help with that. And then we know that some person directed a senior campaign official to reach out to Roger Stone to find out what WikiLeaks had gotten from the Russians. And then, of course, you have the president publicly calling for the Russians to help with those stolen emails. And all of this taking place while Donald Trump is pursuing what would probably be the most lucrative deal of his entire life, and one that requires Kremlin approval, this Moscow Trump Tower. And then, of course, all of the above, lying about all of the above. 100 contacts, but probably 1,000 lies. And it's that bigger, broader picture that Mueller's looking into.
You laid out the bigger, broader picture, but as we said, so far, Robert Mueller, he's not charged anyone with directly conspiring with the Russians. Based on everything you just laid out, that charge still isn't there, is it?
Well, you know, Bob Mueller has the advantage of a lot of evidence that we don't. We were really circumscribed in what we could look at. For example, we wanted to try to compel some of the witnesses that Mr. Stone alluded to come in and testify. We wanted to try to test what Don Jr. and others were telling us. We wanted to get phone records. We couldn't do that, but Bob Mueller has been able to do that. And I would expect, George, that if there is a conspiracy to defraud the United States, a collusion indictment, it would be the last indictment that Bob Mueller would seek, not the first. So we'll have to wait to see what evidence he produces. But you certainly do have to ask the question over and over again, if there were innocent explanations for all of this, why all the lies? Why all the repeated efforts to get Russian help? And of course, you have this symmetry of interest here where Donald Trump wants help from the Russians with his campaign. He wants help from the Russians to build this lucrative Moscow tower. And the Russians want help from Donald Trump. They want sanctions relief. And all of this is going on at the same time.
Your colleague on the committee, Congresswoman Jackie Speier, told CNN that she believes that Donald Trump Jr. lied to your committee on at least 2 occasions. Do you agree?
Well, I'd like the special counsel to have access to Don Jr.'s testimony and determine whether it is evidence of false statements. I think, and I greatly appreciate the seriousness with which the special counsel takes lying to Congress. So I'll let Bob Mueller be the judge of that. But one of the first acts, if not the first act of our committee, will be to send all of these transcripts of all the witnesses to Bob Mueller so that he can consider whether additional perjury charges are warranted.
Are you confident that Robert Mueller and his team have not yet seen any of those transcripts?
No, I believe the special counsel has had access to the transcripts, but not for the purpose of use in a perjury prosecution. So that's what we want to make sure, that the special counsel has access to these transcripts and can use them for whatever purpose, including perjury prosecution or witness intimidation or obstruction of justice.
You mentioned that conspiracy to defraud the United States would likely be the last indictment that Robert Mueller would issue. There's been some speculation out there that Roger Stone may have been the last indictment for Robert Mueller. He doesn't have enough evidence to charge anyone in Trump's orbit for conspiring with Russia. If Robert Mueller concludes there was a cover-up, there was a lot of lying, as you just said, but no direct conspiracy, what is the appropriate next step? Should he just tell the Attorney General, no more criminal, we've concluded there's nothing else we can prosecute, that's it, end of story, or does the public need to know more?
Well, first of all, I think it's clear that Mueller's work is not yet done, and we can see clues of that in the grand jury activity, in the fact that with this Supreme Court case of this mystery state-owned firm reaching resolution, that there are additional documents that Bob Mueller wants to get. So I think there's more work that he has to do. But when he is finished, finished returning or seeking indictments, then he makes, I hope, an extensive report to the Attorney General. And that report is going to have to be made public. And I think there is significant agreement among Democrats and Republicans, even if there isn't among the nominee for Attorney General, that that is too big to be buried. And we're going to use every device and compulsion we can to make sure that it's made public. I have to tell you, George, over the last 2 years, as the Justice Department has been providing thousands and thousands of documents, tens of thousands of documents, in the Clinton email investigation to the Congress, acting on a subpoena or many subpoenas, I have made it clear to them that they're not going to be in a position, once the Mueller investigation is concluded, to say, no, Congress, we're not going to share with you any of the evidence that's produced.
That's sharing. Let me press you on that point, though, because when James Comey came forward after declining to prosecute Hillary Clinton, Democrats and others were quite critical of him for having that press conference, for laying out his reasoning in public. Why shouldn't that same standard apply to Robert Mueller?
This is the point that I was raising in the Justice Department, which is when the Justice Department started sending FBI interview reports, or 302s, and then started to send text messages and other documents to the Congress by the thousands, that was in contradiction of the Department of Justice policy. And I warned them as they were doing it that they were violating their own policy, but they were setting a precedent that they were going to have to live by. It simply wouldn't be acceptable for the country that they would provide discovery in one investigation but not the other. And that's the position they put themselves in. But at the end of the day, the most important discovery is that report. But given that it's not guaranteed and that it may be that Bill Barr fights the release of that, we have to continue our own investigations in Congress, because one way or another, we are determined the public is going to know exactly what Donald Trump did, what his family did, what his campaign did, what the Russians did, and what we need to do to protect the country.
Final question. The president is insisting that after this 3-week period the government is reopened, that he's going to demand the wall again, perhaps declare an emergency if Congress doesn't provide it. Are you prepared to support any wall funding as part of a broader compromise?
I don't support any wall funding, but I do support border security. And, the important thing I think to remember here is Democrats and Republicans can not only reach an agreement on border security, we already have multiple times. In fact, we agreed on conference reports that would set out the funding for border security. We sent multiple bills, through each chamber with bipartisan support. The only thing that got in the way was the president was frightened off by Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh. And while we will negotiate amongst each other and with the White House, we're not about to negotiate with these conservative pundits. And therein has been the problem, but I'm confident and hopeful we're not going to see shutdowns again. And I think one of our top priorities is passing a bill to make that kind of shutdown impossible in the future.
Adam Schiff, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Mike. I'm the creator of Mox News. And for the last 15 years, I have been telling you that as long as I have the support of the community that I serve, Mox News will post videos forever. And that's the truth. As long as I have your support, no one can ever make me stop. Unfortunately, currently, Mox News viewers, damn it. Hi everyone, my name's Mike. I'm the creator of Mox News. And for the last 15 years, I have been telling you that as long as I have the support of the community that I serve, Mox News will post videos forever. And that's the truth. As long as I have your support, no one could ever make me stop. Unfortunately, currently, less than 1/2 of 1/10 of 1% of Mox News viewers ever donate, tip, or contribute anything back. Again, let me make that really clear. Much less than 1/2 of 1/10 of 1% ever give anything back. And to those of you who have donated to Mox News, I want to thank you so much, because it's because of your generosity that we have been able to bring attention to important videos that millions and millions of eyes would have never seen. And I think that that's an amazing thing that we've been able to make happen together. And I can't thank you enough for helping me make that happen. So it's not too late. If you'd like to see Mox News covering the 2020 presidential election, if you can't imagine the 2020 presidential election without Mox News, please, there's still time. You can make a difference. It's easy to make a contribution, donation, or tip. You can go to moxnews.com, or in the text body of this video, there are clickable links to the Patreon page or to the PayPal page. And again, it should take less than 2 minutes to make a donation, and your donation can make a big difference. So I thank you all. Stay cool. One of these days this war is going to end, and it would be awesome if Mox News could be there to celebrate that day with you.